Hey, what's up, guys? Where am I? I'm in a, what do you call the, Ephrata Cloister. It's beautiful, absolutely beautiful fall day, autumn day. And, what is this Ephrata Cloister? Well, it's always a thing with America, and you gotta understand that to many Europeans, particularly at the end of the 17th century and the beginning of the 18th, there was a lot of almost generational weariness with the wars, the conflicts between the Protestant and the Catholics. Obviously, you had the whole thing in England, in Ireland, Scotland. On the continent, of course, the Mediterranean Catholic countries took care of their Protestant problem. Many of the early settlements in America are Huguenots and French Protestants who survived St. Bartholomew's massacre, although they got massacred at St. Augustine. But in terms of history, you had a lot of... Sometimes in order to understand, it's very easy to decry the Enlightenment. Of course, I argue the Enlightenment comes from Protestant Christianity in a sense, but whatever you think, the wars, those devastating wars, the 30 Years' War, took a real toll, particularly on the countries, or there wasn't a country yet, was it? It was a bunch of kingdoms of people with, I guess, a shared language, even if the dialects were very different. But I'm talking about the Germanic kingdoms, and of course that fault line ran through the Protestant Germans and the Catholic Germans. My mother's family was made up, like I said, my grandfather was a Calvinist, but my grandmother and her family were all Catholics. And so you had these groups coming to, particularly the more Protestant ones, who were too much for even the Protestantism of the German kingdoms that were Protestant. They sort of fled to come to this place, right, the New Jerusalem, where they were sort of brought over. Essentially, though, if you look at the history of German immigration to Pennsylvania, the Quaker plantation, the Commonwealth, many of them died on the trip. Many of them were fooled and swindled and had to fill out their indentures, their servitude. But the promise of a new Jerusalem, which is what you see, particularly the Germans that settled here, or what you call, I guess you call them now Seventh-day Adventists. The only ones I knew in New York they're all Jamaican, but the Seventh-day Adventists, they thought the Sabbath was on Saturday, right? The Sabbath, that's when you celebrated the Sabbath, not Sunday, like those damn Catholics. Very dour place. Obviously, this was reconstructed, but I always thought all these windows, you see, they were able to make multi-story levels. The Germans were very good builders. Multi-story levels, almost like these things are looking at you, right? Yeah. Of course, the construction of these is also made for what? They're made to try to withstand the attacks of perhaps what originally might have been Catholics back in the day. And you can argue with some Catholics instigating, of course, the Delaware, the Indians that had once worked for the English, and now the French had bribed to attack. And this area was sort of in that zone. Remember, there is no Western Pennsylvania. It's French and Indian territory. And some of the young men who had founded this, they ended up becoming prisoners of the Indians and dying in France. Interesting. All Germans. So they did a pretty good job, Of course, the Seventh-day Baptists, as they were called, they were different. It was kind of like you have the same thing with Buddhism, right? They were the majority of the people who had families, and then they were like the hardcore members who were celibate. They slept on wooden pillows. They slept only 6 hours. They prayed and worked most of the time, right? Like you would see, yeah. And eventually, of course, as there always was, the man, Conrad Beisel, a visionary man, founded this. Eventually there were schisms, as there's always schisms, aren't there? You know? In fact, two of those brothers who had left here, the third brother had survived. He wasn't captured by the French and the Indians, and he came back, and there was all kinds of little legal battles. Of course, this area, they produced stuff, they toiled and they worked. It's interesting, the museum inside, it shows how it was. They worked hard, they conducted hymns, of course. Very Old Testament character, even further than like the Calvinist. Very much this was a New Jerusalem. Now, of course, you could say the people were fanatics, zealots, related to the forces acting today. I used to think that. Now I'm kind of more like, listen, these things, they become different things, but you can't, it's not a direct line. You can't blame the people here. They tried to make a life that was informed by what would happen even frequently in Europe, these horrific wars. Right? Anyhow, apparently this place was almost all falling apart, and then the 1941, I guess the state of Pennsylvania bought this and they refurbished it. This is a very nice place, very peaceful. You see the old architecture, like I said, the windows, all these stories. Very creepy. You think of movies like The Village. Well, essentially in The Village it was the same idea. The elders trying to escape. What you find out later is the crime wave of the cities nearby Philadelphia. You think of all kinds. You think of Nathaniel Hawthorne. The atmosphere here is very solemn, of people in a dark world. I mean, when they moved here, like I said, at any time the Indians were ready to strike. Although they're also trying to fight for their land. And the Quakers like to use a lot of these people here, their fellow dissident Christians, to go on the frontiers and be the buffer between them and Philadelphia. You can argue it's not much different now, but it's a nice, peaceful place. I like to come here. Inside the museum, they actually found here a glass trumpet. It was buried. Someone had buried it into the earth here in the 18th century, and it was dug up. Glass trumpet, obviously, probably producing a sound, a music that only the angels could hear. Perhaps, as you know, with these religious groups, the whole idea was that this world of darkness and sin, this world of demons and shadows, which I share with the view, the second coming of the Messiah was at hand. Well, maybe they got the timing off a little bit, but it's interesting, that glass trumpet. Perhaps it will produce a sound on the last day of the earth, the end of the world. It's also interesting too, there's a little booklet in there. One of the first things published here about the comet. There was a famous comet, I believe in the 1600s, that they saw in the sky for it was there for like 2 years in the sky. You could see it every night, I'm pretty sure. And what that meant, the omen, what it portended. Well, what did it portend? Just like the glass trumpet. Right. I've been reading D.H. Lawrence's unfinished book before he died, Apocalypse. Very interesting. Of course, the Heideggerian sense that something is lost, right? And it has concealed itself from us. Right? A lot of The existential creepy sort of thing, but it's not creepy. Look how beautiful this is. I love this. In some ways, I wish I was one of these people at one point in a dark wilderness, but with a belief that was genuine, risking your neck, risking your safety, risking everything for. And here's the old cemetery, and many of them are faded. You see how thin the ones are. Most of the early headstones, if not more than half of them, are all in German. These people were Germans. And it's interesting to see that. The Pennsylvania Dutch, as they say, the mispronunciation of Deutsche. And on some of these, I think, I'm dealing with a camera memory issue. I'm trying to put out a lot of videos, as you can see. But beautiful. Look at this. Yeah. Hold on a second. I'm going to use the power of editing. An example of a headstone. The inscriptions are almost all but worn away. Or maybe there was no inscriptions on there. These Seventh-day Baptists were a peculiar lot. But one thing you notice here, what do you see here? Yeah. Now you see that a lot. In the old Highgate Cemetery in London, I think someone's in Paris, you see they would put skull and crossbones on the headstones. The skull was always there, right? Remember one day you too would be dead, right? It wasn't just for pirates, but you see that, and it's, of course, it's a horror atmosphere, Halloween atmosphere, yeah, but the reality of things was this was normal life. Death was a part of life. Okay? In some ways, you know, we put it into horror movies, just as they used to sublimate it into other forms of dealing with it. But to see that, I don't know. It's just, it's beautiful, you know. I guess I'm too old to be a goth anymore, or to be like Poe. But you see what I'm saying. So anyway, this is the Ephrata Cloister. Nice, peaceful place to visit. Let's see. Yeah, these are all. Yeah, this is old. The ones you can make out, they're in German. Trying to see if there's anything else interesting I can show you before I run out of memory on my camera. I have to make these videos, put them up, and then delete this, and then do more, because I'm just obsessed. Yeah, they also, not just the French and Indian War, they got caught up in the Revolution too. So, and one of the inhabitants here was a soldier. They had an army hospital here, and it was like about 60 soldiers died in it. And when the army left, the people burned it down. It's very interesting. And here you can see some of the German written here. Interesting. We'll leave it at that, for the namesake. That's it. Later.